Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. It's that holiday time of the season, and people are out there in droves doing what they do year in, year out, buying presents, going visiting people, spending into the season, etc. Many people are missing out. Many people are not able to partake in this stuff. Many people cannot even fathom what Christmas is like or any of these other holidays are like in a festive fashion. They're too busy worrying about how they're going to eat. So before I get started, I just want to put a plug out there for all those who are in the street, who don't have a place to call home, who don't have a warm meal, who don't have warm clothes. Remember, all this stuff you see on TV, all this glitz and glam, that's not real. What's real is waking up in the morning, having a place to call home, having a family, having things that are secure in your life. And right now, folks, there's not much secure in any of our lives. Right now, as we enter into this holiday season, full of good cheer and full of bullshit, many people are literally on the outside looking in. So that brings me to the most important point about this time of year, and about politics in general, and about what is most dear to me, which is the progressive movement. We had an opportunity for this GOP tax scam bill, this Trump disaster. We had a real opportunity to dig in, learn, do something different for a change, and really make some headway. Last year, during the primaries, when the Democrats were cooing and thought it was just a surefire thing that Hillary would win, Chuck Schumer was busy talking about how we needed a comprehensive corporate tax reduction to encourage them to repatriate their dollars from around the world. So a year ago, the Democrats were already preparing to do something very, very similar to what Trump just did. Now, people don't pay attention to those sorts of things because they don't care. They don't care. They want their team to win. Even people that pretend like they hate the Democrats would rather cheer on the Democrats than admit the Democrats were going to do the same damn thing that Trump did. Now, the GOP would have complained that the tax bill was done this way or that way, but nonetheless, these two corporate parties were determined to slash taxes on corporations and the rich. They were going to do it. Why is that? Because they both support a Wall Street neoliberal economy. Now, we've talked about this a lot. But I want to talk to you guys about the pinball game that the progressive movement is doing as we just skip past one of the greatest opportunities ever to make a statement about what we need and what we don't need. We missed the opportunity. There were those of us out there screaming in the wilderness. There were other people, the academics, that were tweeting out in front of hundreds of people, maybe Dr. Kelton would get 300 retweets, or maybe she would get 300 likes, something like that. But then you go and you look at these other asshats, these other neoclassical economists that tell you the world is coming to an end, the debt is unsustainable, we're all going to die. And they would have 22,000 retweets. Some of them would have like ridiculous amounts of likes, 50, 60, 70, 80,000. But there's Dr. Kelton with 300. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in who tweets what and what tweets who, but I think it's indicative that every single conspiracy gibberish video done by Anonymous, done by taxes, theft, and all the other people that don't know much about economics, I find it fascinating that they'll get 2.4 million views of their unsubstantiated gibberish, but Dr. Kelton's going to get 300 or 400 clicks. Now, our movement is busy worrying about this issue. It's worrying about that issue. And then we got a whole segment of the population that somehow confuses an investment for a progressive solution. And let me explain this to you. Investments, by their very nature, are private sector. By their very nature, they are private sector. By its very nature, neoliberalism is pushing us to private sector solutions. Neoliberalism, which is the thing that brings on austerity, is pushing us to private solutions. So when you tell me that somehow or another a new investment idea that you've got is somehow or another the answer for the progressive movement, without doing an incredible amount of math here or any mental gymnastics, by pushing us to an investment, a private investment, you are giving up the fight for a real progressive agenda, and you are embracing neoliberalism. Yes, you're not a revolutionary. That is called neoliberalism. And so what we've got now, because we didn't learn any lessons from this tax scam bill, we didn't learn any lessons from it. There was a guy, some academic somewhere, saying $20 trillion debt. My God, that's unsustainable. We're all going to die. And that makes it in The Hill. That makes it in Forbes. That makes it in MSNBC. That makes it in CNN. That kind of gibberish makes it throughout the mainstream media. So if that is the case, and these are liberal progressive, I wish they'd stop calling themselves progressives, but maybe they are progressives. Maybe the word progressive really does mean economically illiterate. Maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe we need to find a new name. Because what they did was say the debt is unsustainable. They decided they were going to double down, Dunning-Kruger, double down on dumb, and say that the debt is unsustainable. The debt is nothing more than a bunch of savings accounts of already existing US dollars that earn interest and nothing more. There is no borrowing that money. The money sits in an account and earns interest. That's it. Loanable funds theory is that there is no such thing as borrowing money to spend money. That's not how it works. They take unproductive money from the economy that these people are willing to put into long-term savings. And they put it in these savings accounts to defend an interest rate that the Federal Reserve sets to keep price stability, full employment. But they're not really shooting for full employment, are they? They're shooting for this like 3 to 5% unemployment figure. Well, I don't know about you, but if you've got 350 million people in your country, roughly, and you're looking to have a solid 5% of the working grade people unemployed, that amounts to quite a number of people that are left out in the cold on this economy, destroyed, distraught, devastated. Now, here we are. We had an opportunity during this fight to raise our fists up and say, we're not fighting you, GOP, because your tax bill is going to bankrupt the nation. We're not stupid people, so we would never say such a thing, right? We would never say such a stupid thing as you're going to bankrupt the nation, right? Good, because it wouldn't. What it does, though, is something even more dastardly. It creates even greater wealth inequality, which once again allows these people up here to ride on their laurels, be rent seekers, and actually just live off the interest of their money. They don't ever have to work another day in their lives, while they create a lower class that has to work till their dying day. And not just them, but their spouses. Kids are raised in a virtual environment. They are no longer raised by mom and dad. Mom or dad even. But these people up here are getting more and more and more of the gross domestic product, our national income. They are siphoning more and more and more of the GDP out of the economy up to the wealthy. So this has nothing to do with bankrupting the nation. Saying that only sets the bar up for when we try to spend money on the people. And you say, well, 5 minutes ago, you idiot, you said we were bankrupt. You moron. Right? That's what comes out. So how are you going to spend on a robust New Deal if the next breath you have said that the country is bankrupt? You would have to be an idiot or a partisan hack to say something like that, right? You would have to literally not think 2 seconds ahead of yourself to take such a boneheaded attack on this tax scam bill. Again, this tax scam bill was horrific for so many reasons, but none of which had anything to do with the deficit. None of which had anything to do with the debt. Not an ounce of it did. But the little people have to work that much harder to survive. And we failed. We didn't even make the national news to get this kind of subject out in front of the people. And the regular people, the progressive movement, couldn't be bothered to learn. It couldn't be bothered to fight the GOP based on real economics. It had to go into bar stool chatter and talk about the national debt and the deficit. That's what we are in our movement, folks. There is no visionary talking about a New Deal. There is no visionary that actually will break the bullshit paradigm and shatter it so that we win. There isn't. All of our lives, we've been pumped full of this crap. And here, of all times, you've got the Cheeto-Leany, the orange maniac, whatever you call him. You got him sitting here pushing a tax bill that is so obviously anti-people, regular people. Now, guess what they're doing? They're sizing up entitlements to cut them, to pay for their tax cut. I'm not joking. So not only didn't we learn the lesson when we were fighting the GOP, because we're too full of ourselves to learn. Too full of ourselves to learn. But now, the very people that I started this show talking about, the homeless, the people without clothing on their back, the people that have food insecurity, many of which will die of exposure in the cold this winter. Those people will suffer for that laziness, that ineptitude, that ignorance. So when you hear me call people a murderer by proxy, it's not far-fetched when you realize that death comes from that ignorance. Now, you can blame the GOP till the cows come home. Bad, bad, bad GOP, kind of like the trolls. Bad Bergen, bad, bad Bergen. Or you can look within and say, why didn't we fight? Why didn't we rise up and say no? And not just no because you're going to bankrupt the nation, raise the debt, and blow the deficit. We know that to be a lie. And we know that the people that said it are not our allies. You can't be an ally and say something so moronic. You can't be an ally of the progressive movement and say something so moronic. You're causing as much harm with that idiocy as the GOP does pushing this crap down our throats. So if you take the GOP who hates us and the Democrats and the so-called progressives that talk about the debt and deficits, lump them all together with one giant ball of ignorance and enemy, put them over here, we're left with a very, very small band of people that get it, that are woke, that understand, that are capable of fighting that, but don't have the numbers or the focus. So then what do you have? You have a bunch of friggin' progressives running around buying Bitcoin. Didn't solve our deficit problem, didn't solve our debt problem, and most definitely didn't get us a New Deal. That's the focus, folks. Not fighting the truth, not fighting to make our government work for us, not any of that. They're going to go ahead and buy themselves some Bitcoin. Yeah, I think I like some Litecoin. Hashtag power to the people. Our movement has chosen to ignore Medicare for all. Our movement has chosen to forget free college. Our movement has chosen to forget that the states are going to lose because the federal government is cutting spending. And that means that their revenues will dry up. And then once the state revenues start drying up and state jobs start getting let go of, and state contractors start losing headcount, and there are all these people carrying heavy student loans that are no longer going to be done away with because we couldn't be bothered to learn. And the environment keeps going down the death spiral. And our bridges are still take your life into your own hands every time you drive on them. You go ahead back to talking about the debt and the deficit. By all means, but look your kids in the eye when you do it. Make sure you look your kids in the eye so they can remember your face when you lied to them. Look your kids in the face and say, I'm sorry, son. I didn't choose to do better. I chose to worry about the debt and deficit and not making our country better. I chose to be lazy. I chose not to fight for the progressive movement. And I chose to be a ping pong ball, current event to current event, back and forth. You know, I've been going through rounds of vertigo lately. It's brought on by lots of stress. And I wake up and I think to myself, how am I going to carry this boulder up the hill? The Real Progressives team is doing what they can do to carry it up the hill. But there I am, rooms spinning. Stress, ear problems, you name it. And there are people sitting there running around party to party, wondering what presents they're going to get for Christmas. And the GOP just threw a tax bill through without any resistance, any real resistance. The Mick resistance. Fist in the air, McRistance. McRistance, there you go. Still talking about debt and deficits. I don't know if you know this, but if you look out there for Sherrod Brown of Ohio, progressive warrior Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown supports a balanced budget amendment, austerity, fiscal responsibility, the idiot savant that couldn't get you a New Deal because the country really will be strapped. When you don't hear people fighting the right fight, when you hear someone talk about inflation right now, of all times right now, you hear them talk about inflation, you know you've already lost. You've lost. And people will run around telling you got to vote blue no matter who. Vote green. Join our People's Party. Join our Progressive Party. Join this, join that. I'm listening, and I'm waiting for somebody to step up to actually get this right. And they refuse. They refuse. Refuse. They refuse to care enough about the people suffering that are freezing outside. They refuse to care about the people that can't get fed. They refuse to help the people that don't have clothing. They refuse to help the people suffering from joblessness and refuse to help the people that are suffering from massive student usury debt. You talk about banksters because it fits neatly on a bumper sticker. But do you know why the banksters are in any way, shape, or form in the name of the game here? Because our Congress has stopped spending on us. And they have purposely pushed us to the banks. That's your game right there, my friends. It's not because Congress can't do it. It's because they've made you fear debt and deficits and inflation more than your desire to save a human life. When you hear someone say, but what about inflation? Show them a picture of a dead person and say, what about death? First of all, inflation's a joke. It's a lie. It's not going to be the case. That's not how it happens. Inflation is an issue of no resources where the money is going. We have plenty of resources. We have food they throw away. We have people that aren't working. We have people that are baristas that are trained to be freaking scientists, that are trained to be computer programmers, that are trained to be architects. But they're making your quad venti white mocha at Starburns. Yeah, Merry Christmas, all right. The tax scam bill went through, and we didn't even put up an ounce of resistance. Pure Mick resistance. When are you going to wise up? When are you going to want to do better? Asking for a friend. We're going to have a bunch of programs cut soon. And the Democrats are going to go along with it because they can't take their foot out of their mouth. And we, the people, won't learn. So there'll be no pressure on them to do better. Unless we take the time to learn. And it's not hard. You just have to know the country can't go broke. It's the creator of the fucking dollar. You just have to know that debt is simply savings accounts at the Fed. The public debt is nothing more than the sovereign government that types in the keys, adding keystrokes for interest to savings accounts, and not a damn thing more. Federal taxes do not fund spending. But what they do is alter the way GDP is dispersed. The wealthy are getting entirely too much of our national gross domestic product, our national income. And all the Democrats could do was talk about blowing up the deficit. All anyone else did was talk about the deficit. Talk about, well, before you cut this, you better cut that. That's the vision of our movement. That's how pathetic the leadership of this so-called revolution/movement is. We never came back with a vision, a bold vision for what we want. We just whined about that, and we talked about debt and deficits. No joke. No joke. If we have unemployment, the deficit is too low, period. How are you going to pay for it? Congress will appropriate it, period. What about the national debt? What about it? Savings accounts that earn interest, keystroked. Private banks? Fuck you. Bridges falling apart? Oh, well. Debt and deficits. Debt and deficits. Levees are breaking and killing poor people. Oh, well. Debt and deficits. Inflation. Puerto Rico doesn't have electricity? Oh, well. Debt deficits and inflation. I don't know what to tell you, man. Bunch of moochers. Debt deficits and inflation. $700 billion to the military? Oh, that's different. Oh, my bad. Social Security's on the chopping block again. Medicare and Medicaid on the chopping block again. CHIP has not been renewed. Food stamps always gain because they just love poor shaming. Taking away any and all student for debt forgiveness programs on the table. But let me guess, debt deficits and inflation. Oh, inflation. What do you think about a movement? What do you think about people that see people suffer and their first thought is, what about inflation? What do you think about people like that? Does it make you think highly of them? Do you find them to be people of high regard? Or do you wonder where the fuck their priorities are? Inflation has nothing to do with printing money. First of all, we don't print money. Anybody says that, you have my permission to throat punch them. Go, We don't print money. It's not how we do it. What we do is when we write a bill, Medicare for all, free college, student debt loan forgiveness, green energy, high-speed rail. We write a bill. Congress says we authorize this spending. Federal Reserve keystrokes money into the Treasury's accounts. The Treasury spends that money to where it goes. They don't just print money. And guess what? To complete the circuit, they tax some of that money back. Not all of it, some of it. Because if you taxed it all out and you had a balanced budget, you'd have no money in the economy. Where do you think the money came from? Banks? That's a moron's view. You got a lot of bank money floating around because Congress failed to do its job. But when that money is paid off, when those debts are paid off, they zero out. You can't build an economy living on private debt. It is unsustainable. We eventually run out of credit-worthy people. Then we start building bubbles. Then we start shorting houses again. Then we start doing all kinds of crazy crap. Glass-Steagall, anybody? No, our federal government writes a bill, issues orders for the Fed to create money out of thin frickin' air. Not out of your tax dollar, out of thin air. And then they spend it into the economy. And that's how money, real net financial assets, makes it into the economy. Not bank money, which is just debt IOUs that get paid off and zero out, except for the interest, which was already money that was spent into the economy by the government. No. We're talking about real, honest to God, thinking truth. When our federal government spends money into existence, it's keystroking deposits, electronic transfers, sends money to where it goes. There is no rolling out the printing presses. Don't be thick. You have my permission to never say it again because it is thick. Keystroke, electronic deposit, sends payments out. When we tax it back, it's purged from the system. Money spent in, money is deleted out. That's why it's not, what are you just going to do, print more money? We always print money and then we unprint it via taxes. And when the money leaves the country because we are a net importer, that money doesn't make it back into the economy unless we're borrowing money from banks. And then it goes away. Because then we're tapped out on debt, or the federal government spends. Tax scam bill, you guys are talking about national debt savings accounts, deficits, the difference between what is taxed and what is spent. We got to reduce that. Think about it. We got to reduce the amount spent or the amount taxed. Yeah, that gap. Why do we want to drop it to zero? What are we thinking? Why would you want to reduce the deficit when we are a net importer and our money is leaving the country? We have to fill it back up. The bathtub is empty when that money leaves the country, which is fine as long as we're not stupid about it and we spend money back into the economy. But if you sit there, oh, what are you going to do? Print more money? You should never, ever talk about economics again. If you ever have found yourself saying, what are you going to do? Print more money? Never, ever, ever speak about economics again. That is not how it's done. Really, literally, unless you just want to self-identify as not in the know, don't say it. Just stay quiet and let us wonder if you know. The minute you say it, we instantly know you literally know nothing about economics. Once you say that word, what are you going to do? Print more money? We know the game is over. You literally have just let the cat out of the bag. You know nothing about how government spending works. Nothing. Zero. Back in the gold standard, they printed so much money against the gold supply. You had a finite pool of gold. They printed out so much money. They needed more money. They needed to make the economy work. They would print more money against the gold supply. That's how it worked. It doesn't work that way anymore. Not since we left the Bretton Woods Accord in 71, 72 time frame. Unfortunately, the only people that figured out how to make this work for them were the rich at the time. We try and tell progressives how to make it work for them, and they talk about the private Federal Reserve. They would rather talk about barstool chatter than something meaningful and simply successful that could make us win. It's cooler. It's like I almost have this vision of their profile picture, kind of like sitting there with a scraggly neck beard, arm tilted back with, the private Federal Reserve. Yeah, the only thing federal about it's the name. It's like Federal Express. Yeah. I mean, seriously, This is the level that our movement has sunk to. We're not getting where we need to get to. And this tax scam bill was ground zero to break the paradigm wide open. They obviously don't care about debt. They obviously don't care about deficits. Why do you? Why do you celebrate reducing the deficit? In other words, the government's deficit is a surplus in the private sector. Right now, that surplus is up here in the rich sector. Instead of spending on the 99% and putting that surplus down here where you and I and our children can benefit from it, you're like, we got to reduce the deficit. We can't spend. What are you going to do? Print more money? You're going to print more money? What about inflation? What about Weimar Republic? What about Venezuela? It works so well there. How many times you heard the cool, edgy neckbeards works so well in Weimar Republic? Like girls like guys with skills. This has got to leave our movement. There is no victory with that level of economic illiteracy. We must, by hook or by crook, if you have the patience to deal with those people that say these things, sit down over coffee and disabuse them of this nonsense. I have long since lost the patience. Long since lost the patience. Coming from that world, I know all the ins and outs of they break out the creature of Jekyll Isle first. Then they start talking about how Wilson on his deathbed said the one thing he regretted most was the Federal Reserve. And then they start talking about, well, federal income tax didn't occur until blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, when we ran out of gold reserves, the nation's technically bankrupt. And they go, and you can go one by one. You can just bam, bam, bam. You know this dumb story like it's yesterday, and they all repeat it like a canon. La, 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 the Federal Reserve. And they go through this thing. And it's like a religion. You almost see them in monk costumes. Jesu Domine, dona es requiem. That's what we're getting, man. And then all of a sudden they want to be the world's best financial advisor, tell you about Bitcoin. I want to let you in on a little secret about Bitcoin. Yeah. We lost an opportunity here with the tax scam bill. The next up is the cutting of entitlements. Are you going to let it happen? Are you going to let it happen? Call your congressman. Get out there. If you can protest about gibberish like show me Trump's tax returns, you can certainly get out there and talk directly and forcefully about not cutting the social safety nets that are also, not to be forgotten, automatic stabilizers that keep the economy from tanking. Now, let me tell you one thing that will not happen as a result of tax cuts. The economy will not tank because of tax cuts. The economy will tank if we cut federal spending. That I can promise you. That I can guarantee in a heartbeat will crash the economy. And then every neckbeard in America can sit back and go, see, it's all a grand plan, man. At some point in time, we got to decide that we're not going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We've got to believe that we have the power. You ever heard that saying, fake it till you make it? Sometimes believing that you have the power to change this situation, standing up and speaking out in truth, not in folklore, not in bar school chatter, not in fireside fairy tales, but in truth. If you believe you have the power to change the scenario and stand up to these people above us are using and abusing us like slaves. They are. If automation were going to get rid of all of our jobs, think about this for a minute. If automation were going to get rid of all of our jobs, why does it take 2 parents in every home to work to survive? Why is there no significant increase in productivity for forever? It's called artificial scarcity. We have so much work left undone. So much incredible maintenance, just maintaining our nation's infrastructure, just maintaining everyone's health, just maintaining everyone's education and right to education, just maintaining our basic, the world around us, from our energy grid, you name it. We have so much work. Every single person in America could have a job, a good job. And for those people that are low skilled and no skilled, we could have a federal job guarantee to anchor the economy. Now, I just proved in spades that if automation were getting rid of all of our jobs, we wouldn't need 2-income households. It wouldn't be like that. There's no rise in productivity. And let me tell you something. If there is some automation craze that suddenly wipes out all the jobs, it's not going to happen. But let's just say it did. The capitalists are going to win because they're going to use that automation to fatten their wallets while we live in squalor. And there are people running around saying, hey, give me a basic income. The basic income is a Trojan horse to destroy and dismantle all the social safety nets. It's the final neoliberal death plunge to keep us all right here, down in the mud, while they excel. We need to have enough money in their pockets so they can keep capitalism alive and well. Somebody said, well, what about their basic needs? You didn't say a basic needs guarantee. What you said was a basic income. A basic needs guarantee would be fantastic. I'd be all for it. But that's not what you said, is it? No, what you said was a basic income, your libertarian logic, your Koch brother logic. Oh, you didn't know that. Look it up. They want to get rid of all the social safety nets, and they want to push everything to privatization. If they just give you a basic income and don't need any more government programs whatsoever, they can wipe away the state and make it just weak enough that they can do anything they want. Corporate tyrants, they cut their taxes, they're making buku, and then they cut all the social programs and they give us a basic income, and there we live in the mud. Good for you. Bravo, brilliant people. You geniuses, you. Federal job guarantee takes away the power, at least some of the power, from the capitalists. It takes away the power of red states to bleed out the poor because people will be mobile and they can go anywhere and have a job like that. And for those people that can't work, don't want to work, would rather play video games or whatever the fuck you want to do, we could always expand Social Security for those individuals. We don't need a basic income for everyone because ultimately that's unproductive money going into the economy, and all it does is fuel capitalism. Again, you tell me you want to give them a basic needs guarantee, food, shelter, healthcare, stuff like that, I'm all for it. That's productive right there. You want to tell me that you're just going to give them money to throw around? That's when you get into issues where production's not meeting demand. Now we've got increased demand because everyone has money, but we've got decreased production. Folks, this tax scam bill should have been enough to make all of our eyes open. But instead, headline after headline, news anchor after news anchor, all these buffoons have told you, oh my God, the debt is 20 trillion. It's unsustainable. 20 trillion, really big number. What did they do? Where did every penny of that debt come from? Every penny of it. Let me tell you, 2 places. The money that these countries and stuff buy debt with, guess what they're buying that debt with? They're buying that debt with their own US dollars that they already have. We're not printing new money. No, they're taking their US dollar holdings instead of just letting it sit there. They've moved it to an interest-bearing account. Now, where do you think that interest comes from? You think the country's bankrupt, don't you? You think it's broke. Yeah. No, it comes from keystrokes. That's it. Keystrokes. They set an interest rate. They set the program. It starts clicking at the interest rate. That's how it grows. But there's no money there. It's just a spreadsheet. It's just a freaking ledger, like blockchain's just a ledger. Just an invisible ledger. You can buy it with blockchain, but you can't buy it with your own government. Why is that? Why is that? Tell me, Chauncey, why is that? It's just a ledger. It's just keystrokes. Oh, you're telling me because they had to do some complex algorithm to mine this friggin' nothing out of nothing, that nothing is somehow or another worth more than the government's nothing. Ixnay. It's a commodity. Government debt is nothing more than U.S. dollars. Now let's ask something. World War II. They were selling bonds, war bonds, man, Liberty bonds. Yes, patriotism all the way. Woo, woo, woo. Fund the war effort. Do you think the government needed your money to fund the war effort? We weren't on a gold standard at that time, so there was no peg to gold. Do you think that those bonds were paying for tanks and planes and stuff? No. They realized that they had every factory in America working at full production. Our resources were tapped to the extreme. There was full employment. Every wife and child in America was working while the husbands were off fighting the war. The sons were off fighting the war. So they had to take money out of the economy. Otherwise, it was going to overheat. Had nothing to do with funding the war effort. So they took money out of the economy by selling you a war bond. Well, what is a war bond? The same thing as a treasury bond. They take money from these places out of the economy to keep it from overheating. Nothing more. We're not borrowing that money, for God's sake. This is not difficult to understand, but you've been duped. We've all been duped. Some of us have been woke. I took the thing out of my neck. No more Matrix for me. Do you want to come out of the Matrix and join us so we can fight this war? I'll pull that thing right off your neck, man. We can go to war with these fuckers. Let's do it, man. Or do you want to just say the same thing you've always said because it feels edgy, makes you feel cool? Or would you rather be right and actually fight for your children for real? This is a personal invitation to wake up. This is our time if we choose to make it our time. Don't let Cheeto distract you from that fact. And on my closing, let me throw this out at you. We've got a really big election in 2018, don't we? But what if those progressives that you're trying to elect, what if they think that taxes fund spending? What if they're afraid of the national savings account, debt? What if they're afraid of stupid things that go bump in the night? What if they say stupid things that further hurt your children, but they have their fist in the air and you feel proud that we defeated the GOP? What then? Do you feel like we had a victory when they do that? Does that make you feel good? Does it make you feel trusted? Do you feel in good hands? Folks, I'm telling you right now, sometimes the enemy you know is better than the enemy you think you know, because then you know who to fight. But when these well-meaning economic illiterates run for office, and they do more damage than you could ever understand because they don't know any better, I don't call that a victory at all. It's a hollow victory at best. And when you see third parties, people gathering, and you see them fanning the flames of the national debt, and you look at their national platforms, and it says, we got to reduce the debt. What are you celebrating when they get elected? For real? What is it you think you're celebrating? Did they tickle your ear with progressive sweet nothings? Is that enough? Really? Are you that easy? I'll sell you some Bitcoin if you are. I'm telling you right now, when we have this election in 2018, those people running, they aren't elected anything yet. You have time to teach them. You have time to make demands. You have time to change the course of history. You have time to make it so that your children can look back and be proud of you and not shamed of you. I look back at the decisions that my parents made politically, and I love them. Dad, I love you, but I'm ashamed of it. I'm ashamed of my own political decisions before I understood. Are you ashamed of talking about reducing the debt and the deficit? You should be. If you're not, that's a problem. That means you don't understand still. A nation that doesn't understand can easily be screwed into austerity. Do you know what austerity means? Do you know what neoliberalism means? Not just, oh, Hillary's a neoliberal. But do you really know what it means? Do you know what any of this means? It's an important thing to know. It's very important to know. Neoliberalism is a belief system of privatization, of reducing the public space, meaning the government space, and enhancing the private sector. Well, guess what? The private sector doesn't create US dollars. US dollars come from the US government. It's a patent. Article 1, Section 8. It is constitutional. It comes from the government. The stuff that comes from banks is debt. It's not money that you just can save. You can't save a loan. You have to pay it back. And if you don't, you go default. But you don't have to pay back the money that you've earned that has been spent into the economy from the government. Sure, they'll tax some back, but that's to keep it and the value of it going. It's got nothing to do with the petrodollar. I'll get to that in a minute. If you look at what neoliberalism is, you hear that from the libertarians. Libertarians want to eradicate the public space, and they'd love to give you a basic income so they can keep funding their capitalism. That's the deal. And neoliberalism is pushing us to Wall Street for Social Security. It's pushing us to the markets, to the invisible hand. It's taking away the public space. In other words, the protections for little people. It also purposefully misleads you to believe that inflation will come if the federal government spends money into existence. It will make you say dumb, worthless things. If you ever said print money, you are a neoliberal. If you're saying that, that makes you a neoliberal. Get it? That's a neoliberal thing. Because it's meant to stifle public space. It's meant to stifle a New Deal. It's meant to stifle saving the poor. It's meant to stop full employment. It's meant to stop Medicare for all. They don't want you to have Medicare for all. They want you to be forced into these little teeny agreements with some sort of private sector solution. They want all protections taken away from you, want all government protection. They want the government so weak that it can't do anything for you to help you at all. That is a neoliberal, and that is what Hillary was doing. That is what Trump is doing. That is what Obama did. That is what Bush did. That is what Clinton did in spades, especially when he got rid of Glass-Steagall. That is what Senior did. That is what Ronnie Reagan did. And ironically, that's also what Jimmy the fuck Carter did. You're going to realize this, or you're going to perish from your ignorance. Neoliberalism is the pushing to Wall Street. It's the pushing to 401ks. It's the getting rid of, instead of increasing Social Security payments with COLAs, it is pushing it out to private sector interests. Instead of your company, instead of your paycheck being able to go to your needs, instead you're stuck paying for all these things because our government has refused to take care of its people. And because it doesn't spend enough into the economy, it leaves you and I with one choice and one choice only: private debt. There's neoliberalism. Global markets, global free trade, global getting rid of the public sector and pushing you into the arms of multinational corporations, wars for markets, wars for oil, wars for all this stuff. That is neoliberalism. And it uses a series of things to keep us wimpy and completely ineffective. Social justice warriors. We got the friggin' identity politics. And what does it do? It takes the 99% and balkanizes them into little boxes. I'm not working with them. They're the People's Front of Judea. Well, I'm not working with them. They're the Judean People's Front. I'm not working with them either because I don't like the way that they looked at me. I don't like them because I don't like his tone. I'm not working with them because I don't like the fact that they grabbed my Bernie Sanders microphone. I don't like that because they are mean to the police. I don't like that because they're mean to the black people. They're mean to this person. They're mean. Bottom line, we're all 1 inch out of the pig slop. We're all buried in our own shit. None of us is out of the shit, even if we have a slightly bigger rice box to live in. Even if we have a slightly cushier seat in our car, even if we're on the street versus having a house, I'm telling you right now, the little people are getting screwed and screwed badly because people are, what are you going to do? Print more money? Won't it cause inflation? Weimar Republic. Our biggest enemies are ourselves. Those people are literally domestic economic terrorists. And they don't even know it. They're unwitting co-conspirators with the neoliberals. Dull as a spoon, and they feel completely righteous because the mainstream media echoes what they say. Folks, we have to make a decision. We're not going to win this war if we don't make the decision. that we're going to stay focused on a New Deal, focused on macroeconomic reality, focused on the environment and how to pay for green energy. Stop telling, well, we'll just have a co-op and then we'll do this, that, and the other. Co-ops are great. They're wonderful. Great. Let's share. But our federal government is the creator of the dollar. Stop cutting our throats by trying to cut spending here to offset spending there. We don't need to do any of that. Let's make the rich irrelevant and spend on the 99%. Or, as you're going to see in very short order, they're going to remove the public space little by little. Next up are the cuts. I hope it doesn't hurt you and your family. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful holiday and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and happy all these other Kwanzaas. But when you get done celebrating capitalism and you get done with all your presents and you're out of the lushness of all your drinking and all your pie eating, I hope you remember that the shit's about to get real. And it's about to get real, real fast. Can we count on each other to fight? Can we count on each other to have each other's backs instead of the stupid, worthless lies about inflation, Weimar? Like I said, I don't have the patience to deal with the trolls that talk about Weimar Republic and Venezuela. I don't have time or patience to deal with those bozos anymore. I'm praying to God, some of you people that have started learning this stuff, find a new bout of patience to help educate them out. And folks, don't waste a million years on them. There are plenty of people out there that just don't understand. They're not bad people. But these people that are committed to idiocy, you got to let them go. You got to walk away. You got to move on to the next willing set of ears. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. We can't get them all. We just need enough energy to force Congress to listen to us, even if they're all Republican, because the one thing they want, regardless of whether they're rigged elections, whether it's a inverse totalitarian state, blah, 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 regardless of any of the stuff, right? They want to keep the proles calm. They want to keep us from anarchy. And anarchy isn't going to solve anything, really, quite frankly. It's just going to make us all living frigging with dirt all over our face in the streets. We need to take on our government head on and demand that they serve us, regardless of who's in power, regardless of their party affiliation. And we need to make demands, period. Bitcoin is not a demand. Bitcoin is not a solution to a macro problem. Bitcoin does not eradicate poverty. Bitcoin does not eradicate student debt. Bitcoin does not provide you Medicare for all. Bitcoin does not provide you with the entire country having its infrastructure redone. Bitcoin doesn't do any of that. Not a bit of it. And how many people do you suppose are going to die from not having health care? How many people that have their Affordable Care Act can't afford their care? How many people are choosing not to get their teeth worked on because there's no dental care in America? How many people are going blind and can't see and don't have glasses or contacts or anything because their eyes are going bad and they have no coverage? How many people have hearing problems and can't afford hearing aids or can't afford any kind of other help that would assist in them being able to hear and take better part in society? And for those people that have many of these illnesses, many of these issues that were born otherly abled, how many of them lead a diminished life because of austerity in this country? Think about it. We have so many people in this country that are destitute. Most people in this country, even people with good paying jobs, don't have more than $500 in the bank account. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. If the economy is so much as hiccups, they will be in the streets. They will lose their homes. The economy so much as hiccups, they'll be that way. And there are people in this movement that say, why do you always talk about economics, Steve? My response is, why don't you ever talk about it? Why don't you know enough to talk about it? Why are you triggered when someone talks about economics? Why do you feel like it's a put down on you when someone teaches you economics? Did you think you walked into a conversation on equal footing? Sometimes you have to humble yourself to learn new information, and it's okay. It's very, very okay. We have got to learn information. We've got to pour the shit out of our head that's been pumped into it. All the propaganda and crap. We need to tip our head like a coffee pot and pour all the shit right out our ear. And then we need to fill it up with real knowledge, real actionable knowledge. Folks, I'm telling you, this isn't going to be easy. I'm not promising you an easy fight. Hell, I was watching somebody that was fanning conspiracy bullshit about Agenda 21 and all this other stuff that's completely checked out of the game, man. And they had 400 people watching a live stream where they bellyached about things like Agenda 21 and stuff like that. No joke. Please tell me how that affects the tax scam bill. Please tell me how that gets you a new deal. Please tell me what that does for you at all. Not one goddamn thing. But 400 people were watching that shit live. That, my friends, is your movement. We got to get smarter. We better get smarter, or it's game, set, match. We got to stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a good night.